You must think of DNA as being totally and completely interactive with itself. When one part changes, the part next to it also changes. You cannot see certain layers as always doing the same thing. When we gave the explanation of the 12 layers, we were careful not to tell you what each one did all the time, only give you their purpose and their energy, or their storage capacity. You'll see that in a moment. Some hints about what they're for. But as they work together, each one morphs, that is to say, it changes depending upon what the other does. So you might say you have an engine where all of the parts continue to shift and change depending upon what the engine needs. Complex it is, quantum it is. In a quantum state, there is no time. In a quantum state, there is no actual place where anything is. For quantum mechanics dictates that any matter, if you want to call it that, or any energy, if you want to call it that, is everywhere together all the time. Imagine something so complex. Now, imagine that it's duplicated hundreds of millions of times in your body. There's something else. Even before we begin to list these parts that are the new tool set, there's something else. And the reason my partner is hesitating is because I'm showing it to him, and there are no words. There's no science. It's new. In order for DNA to work properly, in order for it to do all of the things that we speak of esoterically and quantumly, 100, 200, 300 trillion pieces of DNA must all know something at the same time. There has to be a communication that takes place in the microscopic DNA of your toenail at the same time the longest hair on your head. And they both have to know about it instantly. Trillions of pieces must agree, must have one energy absorption of consciousness. There is no word in science. There is a word in my partner's language. I'll give it to you. A confluence of energy. Confluence in English truly means a melding of energies together, so that they become something else, a oneness. That is a new kind of communication. Science doesn't see it yet, but at some level, they know it must exist. For how else can the human body do what it does? That many parts. Cellular structure is unique. And the DNA creates certain parts of the body that have instruction sets to do specific things. You call them stem things. But DNA is identical all over the body. It's not specific. You don't have toenail DNA and hair DNA and heart DNA. You've just got your own specific DNA. Trillions of copies of the same blueprint for you. And they must talk to each other, or you wouldn't be a human. How do they do it? No name in science, truly, has been given to the process of communication between DNA strands, loops. It will. It will. But let us study now how the communication is done. And now the puzzle starts to come together. For the magnetic master is before you. And you think it has to do with the grid? It has to do with DNA. For as my partner indicated in the lecture series earlier today, there's something you should know about DNA, and that is, it is magnetic. Each loop of DNA has a magnetic field which overlaps the loop next to it, which overlaps the loop next to it. Hundreds of trillions of overlaps equals one consciousness, a magnetic imprint that the human carries around with them, and you have called it an aura. That's how it's created. An aura is not a magnetic field, and you will not see an aura with magnetic equipment. An aura is the result of a confluence of DNA communication in the human body. There's that word again. A melding of energy to create a quantum field not measurable by anything on the planet yet. I tell you this because you have to understand that what happens in DNA happens all at once with every part. Think of the coordination, the puzzle. If you're going to have some kind of esoteric activation that is new of your DNA, think of what must take place. Hundreds of trillions of parts all receiving it at once. What do you think happens to you? What do you think happens to you? At that moment when you realize this is a real communication from Spirit. Can you feel the love of God surge through this room? The reality that is here. That what you are getting comes through that veil purely into your heart, into your emotion, into your mind, properly, appropriately, without a program. There will be those who understand what is to come, and there will be those who don't. And that is why it is being transcribed the way it is in real time for you, so you can revisit it when you need to. That is why it's being recorded the way it is, so you can review it and recall it. But nothing will ever give you this again, and that is you are in a quantum state with me, dear family, right this moment. Take advantage of it. For in this place, there are quantum energies walking between the aisles. Some of them are touching you right now, and you can feel them. Okay, I'll identify it if you want me to. There are some of you right now who have lost loved ones recently, friends recently, and I want to tell you, they're here, for they're in a quantum state just like me. Some of you can smell them. Some of you can feel them touching you. Some of you. And it's beautiful. And you might say, well, why would they do that? Would they do that to make us sad? And I tell you this, they do it so that you'll know that you are eternal. That death is only a shifting of energy. That's all it is. Moves from one thing to another. Old soul, you know it, don't you? They're here to touch you. So you know they're still around. It's done in love. It's done joyfully. Let us talk about the DNA. This now, my partner, is critical. You get the numbers correct. You get the purposes correct. And you teach this in a fashion that there will be understanding. I would like to tell you that there are 5 layers that are being activated to a point where great gifts will be yours. But I would be wrong. For one of those 5 is always being activated. So are there really 4 plus 1? Does it count that way? Already we're in trouble because we are linearizing the numbers. But we're going to do it anyway. Because there is no way I can communicate quantum things to you unless I reduce them to a 3-dimensional construct for teaching. And so I will. 5 layers are involved in the gifts of this age. Specifically, 5. And yet you might say you can't ignore number 1. For it's the 3D layer, and you'd be right. But I'm still going to stick to 5. And their numbers are number 2, number 6, the combination of 7 and 8, and number 9. I will explain. I will list them in review. This is esoteric teaching. It is complex. It is beautiful. It is new. And it starts to explain something for you. Something you need to know. Something you can do that you've not been able to do before. It starts to explain the unexplainable.